Hi everybody, good evening. My name is Cedric Ballary and I'm the president of the French-American Chamber of Commerce. It is my pleasure to welcome you here this evening for our 2020 annual meeting. So a particular annual meeting again, because we are not going to meet in person, but virtually. So I thank all of you who are present here on the line tonight to be with us. Let me go and tell you a little bit more about the agenda tonight. So, rules of engagement, you will be muted by default. So please, I'm asking you to stay mute so you can enjoy the speakers. If you have a question for the speakers, you can use the chat. So please do not hesitate to ask questions, comments at any time. We will address those questions shortly after. The election of the FACC director will take place via the poll feature on this webinar. So I'm asking you to stay tuned till the end so you can cast your vote. And we'll have also another question at the very end of this webinar to ask you about our next event. Presentation and recording of the webinar will be available for download at the FACC website later on. So again, welcome to the annual meeting 2020. Very special thank you to our sponsors and partners. So Docker Frontier, Bertrand will tell us more about this organization in a few minutes, and Business France. So this is a two-part annual meeting. It's new in the sense that yesterday morning we had an extraordinary pitch by French innovative startups, very active in the domain of electrification, connectivity, new mobility, I would say. And as part of this presentation, we heard from Trevor Paul, the Chief Mobility Officer of the state of Michigan. We heard from the economic development from the Detroit Regional Partnership, and of course from Business France and Bertrand. So you can watch the recording of this event soon on our website. So please, for those of you who missed that extraordinary event, feel free to connect with us later on to find or to re-watch the pitch of the startups. Tonight, we learn about lightweighting and electrification in the automotive industry. And it is my pleasure at this moment in time to introduce to you Bertrand Rakoto, a business strategist at Docker Frontier. Bertrand, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Cedric. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to that presentation and this election night for the French-American Chamber. I'm very happy and honored to be here with you tonight. So I'm going to share my screen now and have presentation starting. Cedric, do we see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Great. So, well, thank you very much for being here. This topic tonight that I'm going to cover is about how car makers basically are reacting to the new situation given by the COVID and also the EPA standards that started earlier this year. The announcement came in March for the EPA standards, right at the moment when the COVID pandemic started to hit the American market. So without further ado, I'm going to just start with a foreword on Docker Frontier. We are a market strategy and market intelligence company that is based out of Troy, Michigan. It's been 60 years that we are operating from the area. We have also offices in the world, in 3 offices in Europe. Also, we are located in India and in China. What we do is we do ad hoc market research for industry companies in healthcare, in consumer products, building construction, heavy equipment and off-road vehicle, off-highway vehicle, and also automotive, as I am in charge of the projects for Europe and North America of market research for the automotive industry. So I'm going to start today that presentation with 2 parts. The first part is really about what are the new standards and what is the COVID situation as of now. The second part will dig into how the car makers are reacting to this new situation and what are the different choices that they can make towards electrification and lightweighting to answer the new standards, and also how they have been reacting to COVID. So the new standards kicked in early April. It's a situation that is pretty unusual, as the new standards are not fully implemented because there's a lawsuit ongoing now with the CARB. The new standards decided by the EPA came with the cancellation of a waiver that authorized the state of California to create its own standards for vehicle emissions and fleet emissions. So the 1.5% reduction, annual reduction CO2 emission by fleet is in application, though there is suspension coming because of that lawsuit. The previous administration said did set the standards to a reduction of 5% in annual CO2 emission. So the 1.5% is really way smoother on car makers, and it's supported by FCA, GM, and Toyota. And in the meantime, the CARB situation, where California is willing to have an improvement of 2.7% in CO2 emission year by year, is supported by 5 car makers. And also in its lawsuit, the state of California is backed and supported by 23 other states. Those 23 states don't apply all the California standards, but they are supporting the fact that California can have its waiver. So the current situation is ongoing since the new regulation started, but also it will last probably for a few more months or even years. We don't know exactly how long this situation will take to be solved. And also, since we are in an election year, we can expect that if there are some changes following the November election, we may see a situation that might change, not only just with the California situation, but also with the EPA standards as they have been set. Given the current situation, we expect that more stringent standards would kick in by 2026 or 2028. But given the results of the election, we will see if the situation will be changed earlier or not. But at the earliest, if we see some changes, if the administration changes and Joe Biden becomes president, we won't expect change in the regulations before 2023, as writing new regulations and going with the different partners and market participants takes time. So as of now, we know that the situation is this one. So car makers must evolve in a relative uncertainty, given the different outcome of the regulation and the lawsuit. Just to have a quick idea on what we're talking about when we're talking about the 23 states that are supporting the situation with California. So it's 22 states plus Nevada. Nevada came as a backup, as supportive state, as they are willing now to apply the California regulations, but it has not been confirmed yet. Also, since last week, we know that California is willing to go to full plug-in electric by 2035. This is not something that is considered for this current presentation, even though we know now that this may lead to some changes in the upcoming years on how California will change its regulations, and also will lead to ultimately going into that new executive order to go for electric vehicle only by 2035. So this gives you a good picture of what states are supporting California. And also those states represent more than 55% of the sales of vehicles in North America. So I mean, the situation is very important, and the lawsuit is really supported by a lot of, the lawsuit impact is supported by, the lawsuit is supported by a lot of states, and the impact could be very important if the CARB wins. Then we have COVID. That's something that started, the pandemic started in earlier this year, and with the confinement and also all the restrictions, the market has been hit quite strongly. From 16.6 million cars that were supposed to be produced this year, it was the forecast for North America. We went down to 12, and slowly now we're going back up a little bit. As of August, we were expecting a forecast of 13 million cars to be light vehicles to be produced in North America this year. We have made 3 different scenarios. The optimistic one is between 15 and 20% decrease on a year-by-year compared to the previous forecast. We are now not close to that situation. We are more into the baseline scenario. Scenario 2 is the most plausible for the moment, where we have a market that should end up at the end of the year between 20 and 25% below what it should have been. The pessimistic scenario for the moment is far away from us. To get there, we should see a market that would probably be hit much stronger than expected for the last quarter this year. And there's nothing indicated that for the moment. Even we've seen that the sales in September were stronger than expected. So the market is recovering slightly, but still the situation with the pandemic is very worrisome. So for the moment, we stick to the 20 to 25% reduction in production. Going into the sales, if we look into the different regions, and here I'm just going to give some hints about also other markets, because we need to understand also and create a contrast between the US and other regions in the world. If we look at the sales as they were forecasted by IHS Markit, the sales were dropping by 22% this year compared to the original forecast, pre-COVID forecast. This is a huge drop, and but the market is recovering, and we can expect the market to be back to its pre-COVID level somewhat close to 2023 or 2024. If you look at China and Europe, also on your screen, we see that the market is catching up, but the recovery shows that there's a gap between the previous forecast and the new forecast for sales for those two regions, those two markets. And this gap seems to be long-lasting, where in North America there is a small gap, but it tends to be covered and recovered by the next within the next 5 years. So how the car makers are reacting to this? In terms of production again, we are looking at the US market here, sorry, the North American market here. So in North America, the production was set to be 16.6 million this year. We are down at 13, but we see that the recovery, as expected now, seems to be leading to a market that should be back to what we knew before, what we have seen before by 2023, 2024. So there's a correlation directly between the sales and the production, of course. So we see that the market here in North America is showing signs of strong recovery and a willingness to go back to where it was before. In terms of products for the car makers, the decisions that we see on the right chart is that basically we're going to have more vehicles within the next 7 years, but those vehicles, the structure is also showing some strong changes. So what this chart is describing is what are the number of nameplates that we have, so the models basically, and what the car makers have done between February and August in terms of decisions. So some of those vehicles were set to be launched. Some of those vehicles came in addition, but we see also that some vehicles were canceled in that period of time. So between 2020 and 2027, we see that from 158 vehicles, nameplates were in the market, 31 new nameplates with IC-based powertrain, which means internal combustion engine, and also, so it's full gas or hybrid cars. 31 new models will come within the next 7 years. For BEV vehicles, so battery electric vehicles, 45 new nameplates are coming into the market. And that's a big change. Car makers are coming with very specific models now that are electric only. 78% of them are going to be light trucks, which means crossovers, SUVs, and pickup trucks. Also, we see that within the next 7 years, the car makers have made the decision to terminate 25 nameplates. So there are 25 models that will not be replaced within the next years. And between February and August, 13 vehicles have been canceled by the car makers. Some of them were because of the shift in the demand towards more light trucks, towards different models also. But there are also some decisions that have been motivated by COVID. Sometimes it's anticipated decisions, but also it's decisions that have been made by car makers because the market is changing, and therefore they're cutting some budgets and cutting some initial launches and vehicles that were supposed to come that will not come. But ultimately, between 2020 and 2027, we see that the market is going to grow from 158 nameplates or models going up to 196. And knowing that we have 45 new models coming as full BEVs, it means that by 2027, at the barely minimum, we'll have 1/4 of the market being only in terms of models, of course, but 1/4 of the market will be battery electric vehicles. I invite you also to ask any question using the question in the chat. We can answer your question during the presentation, of course.
Well, Bertrand, there was a question actually from Cedric.
Okay.
He was asking, how do the US CO2 standards compare against Europe?
Well, the European and the US standards are very different for different reasons. The first one is that there's a lot of anticipation and a lot of knowledge about the European standards when they are scheduled. Also, we see that Europe has its own rule country by country. We've just learned this week that France could go with a taxation on the weight of vehicles. So it's changing a lot of things, and it's checking things around a lot more than what we see here in North America, where, of course, there are different regulations between the states. But the car makers are also part of the discussion. We've seen that either the EPA or the CARB have been supported by some car makers. In Europe, the regulations are much more driven by the administration itself. So there are different ways of looking at it, and also different structures in the market. There are much more light trucks here. We are at 70 to 75% of the market being light trucks in North America, compared to about 40% in Europe. And also the segments are not the same. The A segment is non-existent in North America. And in Europe, this is just a very small segment, but the B and C segments are trusting about 65% of the market, where here in the US, we are below 30%. So the structure of the market is really different. Therefore, we don't have the same regulations. Okay. And also we don't have the same need for mobility. So there are a lot of differences. And well, it could take an entire presentation to go through those elements, but there are a lot of decisions that are taken differently in North America and in Europe with regards to the standards. But we are aiming to more electrification on both regions and more lightweighting.
Okay, thanks for your reply.
Thank you. So what are the choices that the car makers can make to meet the new standards and have this improvement of 1.5 or even 2.7% of CO2 emission per year? If you look at the EPA standard, it means that 1.5% between 2018 and 2026 means that we need to save 89 grams of CO2 per mile for each fleet of vehicle, which means that what car makers can do for that? Well, they can go for electrification, full hybrid, battery electric vehicle, PHEV is plug-in hybrid. So it could save 25 grams. 52 grams are going to be by conventional powertrain improvement, direct injection, downsizing, and different other solutions such as stop and start. Also, there's more aerodynamics, 48 volt hybridization. Those can save about 6 grams, and then there is lightweighting, mass reduction. So if you look at the different scenario here, we have the EPA 1.5, we have the CARB 2.7, where it means that between 2018 model year and 2026 model year, we need to save, the fleets need to save 108 grams of CO2 per mile. The car makers, to achieve that, the only two real variables that they have according to their own decision is really to play on the electrification and the mass reduction. Those are the main variables that the car makers can use to meet those targets. So in terms of material in the vehicle, if we go first with lightweighting, we see that the curb weight of the vehicle is reducing between 2018 and 2022, which, I mean, the horizon here is closer to us because we know exactly what the car makers are launching in terms of vehicles. So if we look at that and we look at the composition in terms of what are the different materials in the vehicle, we see that aluminum is increasing. It's increasing by 32 pounds, while steel is declining by 68 pounds. In terms of distribution, we see that aluminum is only growing from 11 to 12% of the vehicle, but given also the fact that aluminum is giving some lightweight advantages, it's taking over also some of the components and structural elements in the vehicles. Also, there are some modifications in the steel. The steel industry is making a lot of efforts to go into more advanced material, and the advanced high-strength steel are growing quite strongly in vehicles. We see that they are gaining 5% in the overall curb weight of the vehicle. From 329 pounds per vehicle, we're going to 478 pounds per vehicle. That's a huge increase, and also it shows that the car makers are implementing more and more new solutions for lightweighting. The rest of the other elements, except for conventional steel, which is the biggest loser here, but the other materials are pretty steady over the years and generation after generation in terms of vehicle. So going from there, I'm going to just suggest to look now into what are the different weights and what is the weight of aluminum specifically going into the vehicle. And if you look at the aluminum content, there's a huge difference here between a BEV and an ICE-based vehicle. ICE-based means a vehicle that is using an internal combustion engine and just the internal combustion engine, and also different type of hybrid vehicles, hybrid powertrains, such as mild hybrid 48 volts, but also full hybrid, plug-in hybrid. So if you look at the different weights in terms of pounds per vehicle, so the content per vehicle, we see that BEVs have much more aluminum, which means that they are a lot also advanced in terms of weight consciousness. And the aluminum content then increases in all vehicles, though we'll see later on why it's decreasing slightly in BEVs. But we see that the overall weight in green is growing for aluminum. So it means that there's a shift between aluminum and other materials in the vehicle to get the vehicles lighter and therefore to meet with the new emission standards. If you look on the right, it just gives you on the overall market in terms of content per vehicle, what are the different types of parts that are in the vehicles. And you see that basically the strongest increase is in body enclosure. So we see more and more doors, hoods, leaf gates, trunk lids being made of aluminum in the next generation vehicles. Right now, we have a lot of front hood yet, and front doors and leaf gates are gaining a lot of market shares. We see also that powertrain is losing a little bit. It's because of the shift between BEVs and the shift from ICE vehicle to more BEVs. The casting parts such as the motor, the engines, the transmissions, also part of the heat exchangers like radiators and so on, are losing shares to because of the electrification, losing weight because of the electrification. So we see that there is an increase, but everything is not increasing for aluminum. There's different parts where the car makers are now tweaking the vehicles to really fight the weight and try to get also more emission reduction through this lightweighting by shifting a lot of parts to aluminum, especially in the body. So digging into the specifics about electric vehicles. So first of all, what do we talk about? What are we talking about when we talk about electric vehicles? When we talk about electrification, it can not just mean battery electric vehicles, so pure electric vehicle. It means also hybrid vehicles and so on. If you look at the blue chart, it shows that the increase in the North American market in terms of production shows that we are going to have about 75 to 78% of the vehicles still IC based by 2026, 2027. This could change with the latest decision and executive order from California, but for now, this is how we see the market and what the market is looking like. The 25% of the market that is lost from the ICE vehicles is going to somewhat equal shares to BEVs, plug-in hybrids, and also BEVs, hybrids, and mild hybrids, 48 volts. To understand why we have that slow ramp up is also to look at what is the technology today. And we are, even if we have seen electric vehicles ever since the car exists, because we have seen electric vehicles at the very beginning of the automotive industry. We are still in the first generation of the new technology batteries, which are the lithium-ion batteries. These batteries are right now getting a good energy density. We are at 260 watt-hour per kilogram for the most performant, for the best ones. We can reach up to 300 watt-hour per kilogram, but this is the limit of energy content that you can put in this type of technology. And by 2026 to 2028, we're going to see the new battery technology or new generation that will be the solid-state batteries. We're waiting for that technology to kick in to really see the battery growing in terms of energy density. We expect those new technology to reach about 300 to 600 watt-hour per kilogram, which means smaller batteries. It means also batteries that can charge faster. So this could also help ramping up by the end of the forecast period that you see here, the BEVs, as they will not be provide the same constraints in terms of mobility than the current technology. So it will somewhat help people get over the range anxiety and other thoughts when looking at shifting to BEVs. Then on the longer term, we see that by 2035, we're looking probably at more hydrogen also in introduction, and we're probably going to continue with diverse technologies. We are not likely to see just one electrification, but probably different types of powertrains that will continue to go on as the market is showing different needs for electrification. Because as you see on the map, electrification concerns the three main markets in the world: North America, Europe, and Asia, with China being very strong on electrification and BEVs in particular. So as you see, there are some improvements being done. The BEVs are really ramping up in the market, but the technology is also a big element to lead for that change towards electrification. Electrification does not mean only just the batteries. It also means a lot of changes for the cars themselves, and this leads to in some cases lightweighting as well. The Tesla harness that you see here is one of the innovations that Tesla wants to bring. It should gain some weight, simplify the vehicle. We will see also some new features and new elements in the vehicles coming with electrification, as we have more and more systems that will now be driven by batteries that are at 400 or 800 volts. And the car makers are looking forward to taking advantage of that to develop new features and new architectures in the vehicles, which means also, if you look on the right, different systems for the vehicles to work and new solutions and also new suppliers. So the electrification of the market is a key for the car makers to get into the new standards, but it's also a lot of efforts that they need to do in terms of innovation and getting new content in the vehicle, new technologies, and also new suppliers that will probably shake a little bit the landscape of the industry as we see it now. And what it means also in terms of lightweighting for the electric vehicles. You know that the battery is very heavy. So the last charts are going to show you just really what are the content in the vehicles and what are the decisions that the car makers can make to get those electric vehicles to be lighter, more efficient, and also to beat that range anxiety that the people are so afraid of. So when you switch to an ICE vehicle to a BEV vehicle, there are different technologies behind that. But the first thing is that the car makers are are shifting to more aluminum. You see here why. Because we're using we're using the IC loss. There's just a typo here. So we're using the IC powertrain, the transmission driveline, and a few other elements that are directly linked to the powertrain itself. And then you have all sorts of parts that are coming up for BEV specifically. But it's not just the powertrain, it's also the platform itself. The BEV platform is something that car makers are working a lot on for different reasons. And those reasons are, first, because they need to shave some weight, and second, to place the battery, or, well, it's equal priorities probably for every car maker. There are three different types of platforms that the car makers are developing their BEVs on. The first one is the traditional one where you can have either an ICE powertrain or a pure BEV powertrain. So you can have a gas engine or you can have an electric motor. And you can have also hybrids. So many car makers are making the decision to go with that for the moment because it gives them the ability to shift back and forth between the different technologies and therefore adapt their volumes to the current ramp up of the demand. Then you have traditional platforms, and those traditional EV platforms are using usual platforms that are deeply modified to adapt to the battery. The battery is no more a component, it becomes a structural part of the vehicle. So you can shave some weight in the BEV by making some room for the battery, and the battery becomes part of the stiffness and part of the construction, the build of the vehicle. And then you have the skateboard platforms that are fully dedicated and only you will see them for BEVs. Those platforms, more and more car makers are embracing them. The battery becomes a key part of the platform of the vehicle. It means that basically you can remove the battery, but the platform would not be rolling without the battery. So Volkswagen, GM are heading towards that kind of platform. So we see that more and more car makers are embracing that type of technology because it also gives a lot of modularity, and it helps the car makers to build different types of vehicles and different segments on one and the same skateboard type platform. So now, what are the different other parts that we see in the BEVs that are using aluminum and giving that push to aluminum not only so in IC but also in BEVs? So there are three types of requirements that the car makers are looking at when making their BEVs. Mandatory ones for crashworthiness, fire resistance, and so on. There are the competitive requirements where the car makers cannot really avoid those, as they are about cost optimization, thermal management. It's a key element also for the batteries, but also NVH, which is noise, vibration, and harshness, basically what makes a vehicle nice to drive. And then there are the customer requirements, where this is where the car makers can tweak a little bit or have a little bit more latitude to really decide if they want to have a different offering for the market or really stick to what the customers are openly saying about what they want in their EVs. And leading to that, they are it's leading the OEMs towards a compromise on what type of material do they want to put in that car, depending on how much they want to achieve the lightweighting goals, to have more performance or make the vehicle more affordable. So that's why you see different strategies for more aluminum or more steel in the BEVs. But if we look at, for example, just two skateboard platforms between GM and Volkswagen, for example, the skateboard platform from GM is using a lot more steel than the skateboard platform from Volkswagen. The reason is that one is driven more by cost and the other more by performance. So you see on the quadrant here where you see the different car makers, and then Volkswagen would be more on the top right, and GM would be more on the bottom left. But if you look at the bodies, then you see that Volkswagen is going to use a lot more steel for the body of the vehicles, the closures, so the doors, and the body in white, while GM is going for a much more multi-material strategy for their BEVs. So car makers are always trying to find a compromise for those BEVs. It's the same thing for the ICEs, even though the car makers have slightly less choices to make in there because there are much more experience and much more reliance on the engine, on the powertrain itself. And the last element here to understand what's the impact of the EVs in terms of material, and also how we get to make those types of decisions for car makers to go for more lightweight or lighter EVs and more performant EVs. It's also to look at what are the material that you use for the battery. So I just given the example of GM and Volkswagen. And when the car makers are making their decision for the design of their battery and the content of the battery in terms of material for the box itself, they have basically 4 different things to look at. The first one is the platform integration. We've just seen that in detail. The 3 others are what is the design that they want to put for their own battery, because the design will influence how the battery is easy to move in the vehicle or to install, and also what's the different strength the battery will have in terms of crash resistance. Depending on how the battery is integrated, you will need more or less crash resistance because of the body around the battery itself. The battery will have to keep its integrated, but does it play a role in the crashworthiness of the vehicle? This is the big question. Then you have the cell form and the battery chemistry. The different cells and the different batteries, the different chemistries are bringing different compromises, because you have, for each cell and chemistry type, you have different thermal ranges, different compromise to make in terms of how you want to cool down your system, what is the different size of cells that you're using, and also if they are changing shape while charging or discharging, which is the case for pouches where there's a little swelling, so you need stronger batteries to contain that. So the car makers are just in front of something totally new when looking at electric vehicles. And this is a very complex decision-making process for them. So when you look at the different standards and to what it leads to very complicated decisions that the car makers need to make over the next 5 to 7 years, where they're going to launch those new vehicles. New technologies are kicking in. New batteries are expected by before the end of the decade. And within that period of time, the car makers will have to gain at least 89 grams of CO2 per mile for their fleet. So they really need to put lots of efforts into designing their vehicles, thinking about how they want to do lightweighting, how they want to electrify their vehicles. And it also gives a lot of opportunities for suppliers. And we have a lot of French suppliers and American suppliers, of course, here in the Detroit area working with the car makers. So it gives a lot of opportunities to all market participants to participate in that new innovation trend, and also provide new solutions for the compromises that the car makers need to make to meet the new EPA or CARB standards. Thank you very much. Don't hesitate if you have any question.
There are a couple of questions actually.
Okay.
Someone asked, I will read a question. It's actually in the Q&A. It's a very specific question, so I prefer to read it as is to be sure that I don't miss any parts. North American OEMs do not seem to be embracing lightweight composites for BEV as much as aluminum, at least to extent of players like BMW. The technology for high volume carbon and glass fiber composites are there, but not being used as a case in Europe. What do you say about this?
Well, the three different, if we're talking about the three American car makers, we are looking at three different strategies. GM is a lot more into multi-material. So they are using a little bit of composites. They are using a lot of aluminum, a lot of steel, high-strength steel also in the vehicles. And there's a huge mix of those different elements depending on the platform you're looking at. Ford is much more turning towards aluminum, and we've seen that with the Ford F-150. The chassis itself is steel, but the entire body is made of aluminum. So and yes, it's not a lot of composites in those vehicles. And if you look at FCA is a little different as well, because first of all, FCA is relying on platform with extended life cycles. So there's a lot more of high-strength steel that are introduced in those vehicles. Also, we see that FCA's vehicles are using a little bit of aluminum for hoods, but not yet. We're seeing a lot of doors or elements like that are coming on the next generation Jeeps that will be produced downtown Detroit at the Jefferson plant starting by the end of this year. So yes, the answer is they are using less composites. The reason is I don't know what is the reason exactly, and it probably needs to be looked into. But usually the shift in terms of material at the car makers is also driven by the fact that they can or they cannot implement that easily within their own production lines, and how they cope with that in terms of what are their capabilities. What are also their capacities in the different assembly lines and in the different plants, and from there we can probably see if they will be willing in the next generation vehicles to shift to more composites or not.
Okay. So it's more a matter of probably technical feasibility more than like psychological resistance, cultural resistance against the use of aluminum.
Well, there is always a little bit of cultural resistance in all decisions with companies that are 100 years old or more. But there's also a lot of capabilities and capacities that are involved in that kind of decision.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me in the chat, I guess, if you need more detail, etc. If you cannot reply your question now, we will try to reply by email.
Yes, I'll be more than pleased to answer directly to any further question or more details needed.
Thank you very much, Bertrand. So another question: what are the main technical trends on inverters, and sensors?
Well, we see that inverters and sensors are going into a lot of miniaturization. Just to go back to that slide, if you see here, there's in the hand, there's an inverter from a company called Vicor. They are miniaturizing the inverters, and it helps creating new architectures in the vehicles, and also it helps the capability to have new features that are rethinking basically the vehicle itself. So there's a lot more of that in the vehicles, in the BEVs, that is expected in the years to come, because it will help simplify the architecture of the vehicle. It will help also having to avoid at the end of the road. Basically, the point is to avoid having 2 different or 3 different systems running in the vehicle with an ultra high voltage, a low voltage, and a very low voltage, like a 12-volt system. So car makers are looking into the different solutions that are available today to go into that. It goes also with the fact that semiconductors are more and more needed for BEVs to also help the battery itself, as the battery can the more you use the battery for strong accelerations, for example, the more you're gonna heat the battery. And semiconductors can help supplying temporary or for a short period of time extra power, so the vehicle can have stronger reactions without having any impact on the lifetime or the qualities of the battery. So we will see more and more inverters and more miniaturization and more actuators and new features in the vehicles. There's a lot of discussions around that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will ask a last question because I'm afraid then we are short on time, and then I will forward you the question, Bertrand, so you can maybe address them by email. So the last question was like the concerns, you know, about the availability of raw material required for the manufacturing of the battery. Are there any concern about recyclability of the batteries? Are we actually creating more problem in terms of environment protection by introducing, you know, electric vehicles?
Well, that's a great question, and that's probably
very tricky, I guess.
That's $1 billion question.
I said it was a good way to go.
I will not say that I have the answer to that. There are some concerns that are raised on the first, the availability of the material, but also the way the materials are extracted. We've seen lately that Tesla is willing to go for batteries without cobalt. There are some discussions about technologies, different technologies around different chemistries around lithium. There is also some batteries where we are looking forward to having more aluminum in the anodes and cathodes to reduce the need for cobalt and other elements that are raising different problems in terms of not only the cost, the sourcing, the social also aspects. The mining for some of those elements is raising a lot of questions on a human perspective. So getting into a new technologies is giving new answers, but also it's raising new problems. So it's all about understanding what technologies can be developed in the future. So we consider pollution as a whole, as a planet issue, not just tailpipe emissions, and also looking at how we can tackle those issues and make sure that by going into new technologies, we don't create new problems, but we solve the current problems and probably get situations where we will surely have to think about different ways or different strategies. That's why also I was mentioning that we will have probably a future with different types of powertrain, not just electric, but fuel cell, which is different type of electric, but also there are some research on different types of technologies around already IC, so internal combustion engines, hydraulic powertrains. There are different powertrains and different solutions that are being in the works and being in the R&D phase. So we will see, and batteries are surely part of our future. We just have to make sure that we do it the right way.
That makes sense. Thank you very much, Bertrand. I don't think we have more time for another question. Cedric?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Bertrand. Hopefully you can hear me now. I'm going to go back to the main presentation. Hopefully you can see my screen. So I'll attempt in a very quick minute and quick second to summarize what I heard from you this afternoon. So fascinating presentation, fascinating set of information. We understand that COVID has had a real effect on our industry. It's no secret to anybody, but we see also that we have a strong recovery, maybe not to the level of the pre-COVID crisis, but volumes remain strong, and we are not in a situation where volumes have entirely collapsed, which is a good thing. We understand also that CO2 reduction is a sure trend because it's shared across all continents. but it's also a trend with uncertain targets. And especially in the United States, we see various levels of legislation affecting the OEMs and probably fogging their ability to implement certain technologies. You indicated that weight lighting and electrification are the two levers, the two main levers by the OEMs to achieve those CO2 targets, and for which aluminium, in the case of lightweighting, plays a significant role. And for battery, for electric vehicle, we understand that the new generation of batteries will have an influence, as well as the new design of the body with the integration of the batteries inside the structure to replace some functionality of that structure. So thank you so much. What we see here is that there are still lots of opportunities, lots of risk, but that's okay, that's normal, but lots of opportunities for French companies to thrive in that environment and to provide the new business solutions to that industry. So thank you again. I'm going to move on now to the next part of our evening tonight, which is the annual meeting. So annual meeting, it's an important part of the life of the FACC. It's the way for us to keep our members informed about what's happening inside the FACC, what we have done, how we are performing from a financial standpoint, as well as making sure that our directors are elected by our members, and that we have a panel at the board which is representative of this membership. So 2019, 2020, a year in review. So I'll try to go quickly, but at the same time, it's interesting to point out, to look at the past and see what we have achieved. Last year, annual meeting in March, we did a round panel around automotive innovation and technologies at Accenture. We had both Faurecia and Navia making presentations, very, very interesting. Business France in June, we partnered with them on the pitch of French startups in the domain of connected and autonomous vehicles. July, our traditional European Chamber Summer's Wine Tasting at Meadowbrook, fantastic event. Bastille Day celebration in October, the French Tech Innovation, again in partnership with Business France. November 1st last year, so some of you were there. I hope you were there. We had a beautiful event, our main fundraising event of the year, the Gala, where we welcome Gérard Mourou, who was the Nobel Prize in Physics for 2018. So for those of you who were there, fantastic presentation about laser technologies and the history of the Nobel Prize, and how Professor Mourou received that prize at the Nobel Academy in Sweden, Stockholm, in Norway, in Oslo. So Beaujolais Nouveau in November last year. February, we had a cross-cultural awareness and global leadership with a coach. And in March, we had an e-mobility executive dinner where we discussed again the topic of electrification of the vehicles among various partners in the industry. I think that was one of our last live events before COVID hit. And what I want to emphasize to all of you here is that we were able to retool our communication medium with all of you. And we were able to embrace the virtual world and introduce Zoom meetings with virtual wine tasting, immigration law update in the context of COVID. We had a webinar roundtable on the operating business in new normal. We had a long conversation about how this was going to affect the travel industry, the hospitality industry. Fascinating concerns, but at the same time, very real and affecting our members. Virtual wine tasting again. And June 4th, we had a very interesting interview with the CEO of BorgWarner, Frédéric Lissalde, who I really want to thank here today to give us, I would say, his take on how COVID was affecting his company, the industry, and how BorgWarner was responding to those challenges. June 10, we had an interview with Guillaume Lacroix, General Counsel of France in Chicago. And July 11, we had a reception. So small committee, COVID forced us not to open this reception to the public. We had some members of the FACC to meet with the ambassador of France, Mr. Philippe Etienne, who came to the region to sort of understand the challenges that we are facing, but also the opportunities that French companies may be facing here. Some of you maybe have been part of the last event that we did prior to this one, which was our virtual wine tasting at Meadowbrook. The picture I'm showing here on the screen is interesting. We were in the cellar of Meadowbrook, and we had a 1928 bottle of Mouton Rothschild that was on display, and we talked about wine, and it was a lot of fun. So I want to thank all of you here on the call today to support our activity. The mission, one of the mission statements of the FACC is to provide a forum of exchange for our community, to provide value information that are going to be necessary and useful to you in your business, but also provide the framework for networking and the ability to connect with each other and to give ourselves the ability to learn about each other's and be better at what we do. So obviously COVID is not, I would say, is not conducive to these goals at the same time, but I want to thank all the members and all the directors, officers of the FACC for helping me, for helping our community to convert our tools into what we have done and being able to continue our mission considering the circumstances. So next, I think it's important for me to share with you the financials behind the FACC. We are doing well. So 2020 is not yet over, obviously. But 2019, when we closed the book of 2019, we had a net income of $12,000, so about 10%, roughly. We are a non-profit association, so the goal is not necessarily to make profit, but it's important to maintain a certain cash on reserve to be able to continue financing, subsidizing some of the events we do. So cash on hand, $155,000 at the end of 2019, very comfortable position. So what has the 2020 pandemic done to us? Well, it has forced us to restructure our cost revenue model. Obviously, we are not doing certain events. We are not incurring the cost, neither the revenue associated with certain events. We have a slight degradation of our cash position, like many organizations, many companies out there, but it's not affecting our short-term operation nor our long-term viability. So projection, we could survive 5 years of COVID. Obviously, it's not going to be 5 years, but we have sufficient, I would say, cash on one hand and a very lean operating mode on the other that allow us to see the future very positively. We are financially healthy and stable, and we will be able, because of that, we will be able to continue our activity with you. So now it's coming for me the time to come to the election of the directors. So you have on the page the directors who are up for either re-election or election. So I would like to note 3 names. You have seen them in some of the invitations. So Corinne Dimmer from Valeo, Bertrand Rakoto, sorry for the misspelling, the typo, from Decker Frontier, and Rita Tronel from ESI. There are new directors seeking election. All the others have already been serving at least 1 term with our team. So maybe it's time now for you, Lisa, to send the poll. I am asking for your, let's say, vote in supporting me and supporting these people in their role by, I would say, saying yes to their elections. So I'm not sure it's going to be like that at the beginning of November here in the US. It's not Belarusia either, but we are getting very, very, very good numbers.
Cedric Ball, you can reply directly in, in the form, in the online poll. You don't need to reply in the chat.
Okay.
Right. I think I can end it up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Should I share the results?
With everybody.
Okay. I share?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. So here you go, 100%. So it's almost no, I won't say it's not Soviet style. It's just good. It's just good sign of support from all of you. So thank you very much. I think we can close this of the page. Mm-hmm. So this concludes our annual meeting. So thank you so much. I just wanted to talk to you very briefly about some of our next events. October 20th, 22nd, please save the date. We are planning in collaboration with other FACC chapters, most notably Minnesota, a virtual event around health and virtual health, new challenges and opportunities. So a topic a little bit out of our zone of comfort because we are very automotive centric. So this brings the perspective of another chapter of the FACC. So it's something that we do in collaboration with them and that will cover most of the Midwest. So please stay tuned relative to that upcoming event. Beaujolais Nouveau, November 19th, in collaboration with the Alliance Française, which will do a virtual wine tasting. I'm inviting you to join us as well. And next event, we wanted to ask you the question about where we think we should focus our attention next. So please feel free to answer the poll. I'll let you read the questions, but where do you think we should, what event do you think we should do next?
I just give it a minute because options take a bit time to be read. So, all right. I'm going to end it now. Oops.
Okay, and the winner is Interview with a Leader, CEO, Government Official, Consular Services, and so on. So, yeah, the interview with Frédéric Lissade that we did in June was very productive, very informative, very personable, because we got his vision, and I think it's always very, very interesting to learn from leaders. So we take this recommendation at heart, and we'll work on providing you with such an event in the upcoming month. So thank you so much. I'm going to take it off the screen. So thank you again. Thank you specifically to our partners, Decaux Frontier, Business France. And this is how I will conclude. Please remember to join, remember to renew your membership. We also depend on you to keep us doing what we do. So I will conclude here. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Welcome to all the directors, new directors for their election. Thank you so much for your support. I'm looking forward to seeing you soon next. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.